guys, I am excited for today's video because it's a bit of a random one and I'm hoping this will be a shorter video, but we'll see. I'm going to be talking about if I can only keep one palette from all the brands in my collection. I've seen a ton of people do this video recently. I thought it was really fun. I think Samantha March is the first person I saw do it. I will have her video linked down below and some other people that have done it as well. And I am going to be talking about 6 brands today. I do have other brands in my collection where I have multiple palettes from them, like Sigma and Natasha Denona, but I haven't used them enough for me to be able to really pick a favorite over another. And I was surprised that like this was all that I had that I can come up with, because I thought this was going to be a huge video and it's not, which is fine. I'm not complaining. And I really think it's because there are a couple of these brands where I have just a ton from them instead of having several from several brands. If that makes sense, we'll just get into it. I also am cheating on half of these and I have a runner-up. Big surprise. Every time I do some sort of like a tag type video, I always cheat. I cannot help myself. So hopefully you guys will be okay with seeing my first choice and my runner-up pick. So first we'll start with one of the brands that I've had the most palettes from, and that would be Colourpop. Colourpop has such great quality. They have a lot of really beautiful palettes, although they've released probably, I don't know, what do you think? Like 100 palettes probably? Do you think Colourpop has released that many palettes? And I've tried 20? I'm not sure. Anyways, I've tried a bunch of Colourpop palettes, but I haven't tried them all because they make too many and they're too similar. But I do have several others in my collection that I really enjoy the colors and the formulas of, but it was a no-brainer when it came to picking my #1 palette from the brand. That would be the Sweet Talk palette. I've mentioned this in several videos as this being one of my favorite palettes of all time. This shade is a Super Shock, and then these two here are pressed glitters. I do not like the pressed glitters, and this is also, I think, the first palette from Colourpop that included pressed glitters. They've really improved the formula of them since this palette, but I just don't like pressed glitters in general, so I don't usually reach for those, but I love this freaking palette. I do have like 3 go-to looks with this palette. So basically like the 3 shimmers, 1, 2, 3, I will wear on the lid, and they're different enough. This is like a lighter champagne. This is more pink. That's a little bit more golden, more neutral. And these 3 mattes right here I think are incredible. And they're such gorgeous, like peachy salmon shades. I do have a lot of pinks and some peaches in my collection, but I feel like the undertones of these are just a little bit different and very beautiful. I also think this is a really nice brown that they have in here. I love that the darkest color is not a black. It's a really pretty brown that does go nicely with this palette, but I love reaching for this every spring season. Great quality, and the shades are just beautiful. And my runner-up was a limited edition palette. This was an Ulta exclusive. This is a 9-pan in She's Got Solstice, and luckily there isn't really a pressed glitter in here. This is like a Super Shock, but it's a little messier, but it's okay. I'm fine with it. So you do have that like Super Shocky shade. Then you've got these 3 shimmers and the rest are mattes. I love that ratio of shimmers to mattes here. I think that these are really beautiful, and again, they're a little bit more neutral and less peachy than the ones in the Sweet Talk palette. I love that little pop of green. I just think this is a beautiful color selection. This is a really nice spring to summer transition palette for me, and the quality is so, so good. The next brand I wanted to talk about is Anastasia, and this was a little more challenging for me. This is another brand where I have a ton of palettes from them, and I went back and forth on what my runner-up would be, but I settled on something. But for the #1 palette, I picked one that I've repurchased, and that is Anastasia Modern Renaissance. I haven't used it in a little bit, and this is something that truly did change the game. It set off everybody loving warm neutrals. Not that this was the first warm neutral palette, but I think previously what we classified as warm was not as warm as this. And it really inspired a lot of other brands. Now, is this palette that revolutionary? Not necessarily, but the reason that I really love this is, first off, these 2 shimmers in this palette perform so well. They're very smooth. They have a beautiful metallic sheen to them. I really enjoy those. But there are 3 mattes in here that I hit pan on in the old palette that I love so much. And that's like, I like this palette in general, but because there are 3 shades in here that are like must-haves for me, that's why I really picked this palette as my number 1. And my 3 favorite shades would be Raw Sienna, Burnt Orange, and Blonde Fresco. Again, the other shades in here are very beautiful as well. There are a few in here that I never use. I don't like this shade here. I don't like Warm Taupe, but the rest of them I think are really good, and I definitely need to get into this palette more. I love Anastasia formula. I have so many singles from her that I'm absolutely obsessed with as well, but those shades are ones that I would purchase in singles. Raw Sienna is not available in a single, but Burnt Orange and Blonde Fresco are, and I love them so much. I would buy them in singles. And you may be surprised by my runner-up palette because a lot of people really didn't enjoy this one, but I really do. And that would be the Carly Bible palette. I know a lot of people would have picked the Jackie Aina, and there are some shades in there I really, really love, but there are a few of those like pinky purple colors that I haven't touched at all. But I do think that's a beautiful palette. I really enjoy it. The reason I picked the Carly Bible is because you have like a cool tone row and a warm tone row, and I love that you have the both of them. It also has a really good mix of mattes and shimmers, and there are some shades in here that I just love. The only one I don't think I would use out of here is this Bowie shade. It's just a weird olivey gray matte, but the other shades in here are beautiful. These 2 warm mattes are out of this world. I love this cool tone matte, love this shimmer, love this shimmer. This shimmer is very pretty. This blue color right here, wore it in the wintertime and fell in love. I think the Carly Bible palette has the same quality as the other Anastasias. I've heard other people say they don't agree. Anastasia palettes are very powdery, but they don't apply patchy for me, and they blend very, very nicely. So I just love the color selection in here. So that would be my runner-up. The other one I was thinking about putting in was the Master Palette by Mario. I love the shades in there. I think it's so beautiful. Isabel is a shade I wish was sold as a single because it's so incredible. And I love the colors. I love the palette, but really, I love that palette so much because it's very special to me, because my friend Christine sent it to me after hearing me go on and on and on and on and on about like the one that got away. So it will always be very special to me. I do really enjoy that one as well. Next brand is Huda Beauty, and this was a little bit challenging for me. I do have 4 of her larger palettes. I basically have all of them except for the rose gold. And then I have a bunch of her Obsessions palettes, the 9 pans. And while I do enjoy several of the Obsessions palettes, I didn't pick any of them as my top 2 because the formula on those are so incredibly inconsistent. It's very frustrating, but I picked the New Nude and the Desert Dusk, and I really had a hard time figuring out which one of these I preferred over the other. And I decided to pick New Nude as my number 1, and that's because I just love this palette so much. There are a couple pressed glitters in here which I don't like, don't use. They're very, very messy, and unfortunately they only have like 1 of her shimmer shadows, which I think have such an insanely amazing formula. I like them much better than the more like marbleized shadows. These just apply smoother. So I'm bummed that she doesn't include that formula as much anymore. I get it doesn't look as cool in the pan as some of these others, but it performs so well. But I love that you've got some more like purpley shades, pinky shades, and there are some warm colors in here as well. I actually like cool tone palettes, but I don't want them to be too taupey or too gray. I prefer something that's more on the rosy side, and I think that all of the shadows in here, minus pressed glitters and this stupid concealer base, work very well. And I love all the looks I've created. I think it's just so beautiful, and I love wearing this every single winter. And then my runner-up is Desert Dusk, which has my favorite packaging. I love that Huda has put her face on a lot of her larger palettes. She did not do with Naughty Nude, and I wish she would have, because I think Huda is beautiful, and I love this image so much. Like, she has such beautiful eyes and eyebrows. But I picked Desert Dusk as my runner-up because I love warm tone shades. As you know, there are some purples in here. We only have one pressed glitter, and I really do like all the shades except, again, this color Musk I wouldn't use. It's just like a weird color, like I'm blanking, Warm Taupe from the Mono Renaissance palette. I just don't like those kind of shades. I don't find them flattering on my skin tone. They look a little dirty, but the rest of these in here are so beautiful. And this is one of her like classic shimmer finishes, as well as this one. They're insane. They're so pigmented. The metallic flip is really strong. I love these two mattes right here, especially. They're pigmented, they blend nicely. I love that these are some warm neutrals with some purples thrown in. Just a gorgeous combination of colors, and they perform very well. So then I have the brands where I have only one palette. It was very easy to pick my most favorite, and starting with Too Faced. I have tried several Too Faced palettes over the years, but I've gotten rid of a lot of them, and my favorite one in my collection would be Gingerbread Spice. I do have the extra spicy palette. I did try the pumpkin pie, ended up returning pumpkin pie. I felt like the colors weren't special enough. Extra spicy is pretty, but it is more of like a basic warm neutral. I like it. I haven't used it as much as I should. I could do without that one in my collection, but this one I think is so beautiful, and the formula is great. I think that they have improved their formula over the years to just make their shimmers a bit creamier, a little bit more of like a metallic finish, but this has a really nice mixture of mattes and shimmers, and I think this is perfect for someone that loves neutral eyes, but you do have a little bit of, I wouldn't even call them pops of color in here, but just really beautiful shades. I absolutely love this one. You guys know I love olive shades. I love a warm brown. So I just think this is hands down my favorite Too Faced palette of the ones that I have. My next brand would be Urban Decay. I've tried several palettes from them in the past decade as well. I did used to have Naked 1, 2, and 3. I've gotten rid of all of them. I used to really love Naked 3. I thought the colors were very, very beautiful in there, but the formula was not that impressive. But luckily, after coming out with Naked Heat, Urban Decay changed their formula and it became much better, much more pigmented. The shimmers had more shine to them. So in my collection, I have Naked Heat, Naked Cherry, Naked Honey, and the Born to Run palette. I might be missing one other, but those are the ones I believe that I have. I think Naked Cherry performs very well. There are some shades in there I absolutely love, but the colors are all very similar. I need to use Naked Honey more. I don't quite love it as much as everybody else, but I haven't given it a fair chance. Born to Run I think is really nice. There are a few specific shades in there that I love, 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 but I haven't given enough attention to the whole palette. So that would make my number one Naked Heat. Yes, these colors are very similar, but these are my kind of shades. Even though I have a bunch of warm neutrals in my collection, I would actually pick these type of warm neutrals over the Modern Renaissance, even though this one is a little bit more varied because there are some berries mixed in there. I actually really like this, especially in the summertime. I think it can complement a tan. These are more like natural shades, but they're so beautiful. I love the shimmers in here. I love these mattes. They could have made this a little bit more versatile. They could have mixed up some of the shades, but I think it performs really well. This is like the newer, better Urban Decay quality. And I love these shades. The looks that I've created, I've just loved so much. They're easy, they're everyday wearable, but they're some of my favorite shades to wear on my skin tone. And the last brand we have would be Zoeva. And I haven't tried a ton from them. I have tried the Spice Up Your Life and the Caramel Melange palettes, which are some of their bigger ones. And then I have my favorite, which is this 6-pan, the Precious palette. So their larger palettes, I don't think are very good. The mattes blend to all look very similar. Depending on the palette you have, if you have shades that are a little bit similar, once you start blending them, it looks like one color. And then the shimmers almost perform like a satin. They're not metallic, and I like a metallic shimmer. So those palettes I don't think are that good, but this Precious palette is a totally different formula to me. The mattes in here are pretty different from each other, so it's possible that they look different on the eye because they're very different shades, but they are pigmented, they blend nicely, they're buildable, but I don't have to sit there and build them up. And then these shimmers all have a metallic finish to them. They're not a subtle satin on the lid. And I think the colors in here are so beautiful. I love that they added this color in just to add something a little bit different to the palette. I'm very happy that I have this one. I will, however, be hesitant to try other Zoeva palettes in the future unless it's a newer release like this one was, just because I haven't liked the quality of the larger ones. But this one is really good. I would recommend it, and you can buy this at Ulta. So guys, those are my number 1 and number 2 palettes in my collection from 6 different brands. I definitely would love to do this again next year to see if my thoughts have changed. Of course, new palettes will come out before then. I've purchased a lot of palettes at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and I still need to test out a lot of things to really be able to fairly choose which one would be my top favorite. But I would love to know your thoughts on my picks in the comments down below. I would love to know your number 1 palette from all of these brands, or all of the brands that you have in your collection. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye guys.